Hello and welcome to another episode of Life is a Piano. Today I am talking with AliceSun, who is a wonderful pianist from Detroit that I got the chance to meet a couple years back at Harvest Gathering. We hit it off talking about all things music in the green room, and we followed that conversation up with another, varied, fun, and enjoyable conversation. She's doing a lot of cool things in her neck of the woods, including releasing a new album called Qwinn that you can find on her Bandcamp page. If you enjoyed today's conversation and you want to support podcasts like these that I create, you can head on over to patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker. There you can contribute at different tier levels to get access to early finished episodes of all the podcasts in audio and video format, exclusive merch, behind the scenes live streams, and the ability to hire me as an instructor, consultant, or recording artist. So thanks again for tuning in. Feel free to like, follow, comment, subscribe, however you typically interact with podcasts. That would be a big help to what I'm doing. And feel free to share this with someone. I'm sure there's someone in your life who can benefit from these conversations that we're having in the Michigan music scene. All right, let's get right into the conversation with AliceSun. All right, that's posted. I now have 6 patrons, so
Oh, nice.
the climb begins.
When did you start your page?
I started in December, like middle of December. And, in hindsight, I would have started as soon as I found out about it in like 2016. But
Right.
that was like,
Right.
me being in school and being like, when do I have time to do anything, let alone content? And
Right.
then this past year's just been like, well, you got to try a lot of stuff. So why not?
Right.
Why not Patreon?
Yeah, I noticed a lot of artists doing that actually in the last year. So I checked it, checked it out, but yeah, I'm just not a great content creator, so I'll work on that.
Yeah, it's funny because I see Patreon as like, it's another thing where, and I got a real good like insight into it yesterday listening to, actually it was an Instagram live stream with what's her name, Lovey something, I forget what she wrote. A book. It was like some book about her life and like struggles and how she got to where she is now because she made a million mistakes, and she's
Okay.
like, oh, I'm an 18-year overnight success. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, the media started picking up on what she was doing like so far into her career. But
It's so true. Yeah.
but Kev on stage was the guest, I guess, and he was broadcasting it on his to his audience too, and I follow him on Instagram, and they were both just talking about how, like, nowadays it's like you don't need a million people to watch what you're doing. Like, you just need, a couple thousand really invested people, or you need, you don't need to like worry about, putting out things that please everybody, because if the internet's shown us anything, like even the stuff that's universally praised, there's going to be something that, someone's going to be mad about, not even that piece of content, but they're just going to comment like, I hate this is stupid. Or like,
Yeah, totally. Had a bad day and they just want to let it out on your comment
yeah.
section.
So it's like, it speaks to like getting an audience that's like invested in what you're doing and being comfortable with having people who, you put something out and they might have, they might be your friend from high school, or they might be like, a member of your family, and they might not even listen to it or look at it or engage with it at all. And even if you send them like, I don't know, like, here's a link, or I got print out albums, I'll send you one. Like, there's even the people you think that you're closest with on other stuff, like family.
Yeah. Right.
uh, luckily, my family here at least listens to my albums. But like, yeah, it's like, the people you think you want to join you on this journey, if they're not like, it's less about like, a public showing of support where they're like in your comments or like
Hmm.
sharing, like even at the core, if it's like, you have a close friend who messaged you like, man, I listened to your album and it's great, I appreciate what you're doing, and
Yeah,
awesome, like even
totally.
just something little like that. um if people aren't going to do that, that's like, then they're not part of the journey. Their part is checking in every so often when you bring up the subject, not when, you know, you're doing things that have a ripple effect, I guess.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's that tricky part of like trying to let go of that ego part that's like, I want everyone to love it and buy it and support it, and it's like, no,
No,
there's
it's not
so
really
much
that
going
deep.
on.
Well, a quote that I can't even remember whose quote it is now. It's terrible, but it was the quote that art isn't for everyone, and if it is for everyone, then it's not art in essence. Um, and I was like that whenever I get into like kind of like my ego, like I want or like people pleaser, like I want everyone from
Mhm.
everywhere to love it. I kind of like remember that quote and think like, yeah, no, it's good that people, maybe it rubs against some people, or maybe, or people don't like it, it's just not their style. Like that's what being, human is to be diverse and complex, and what we like and what we resonates with us. And so yeah, that reminder. And because I used to be more of like a people pleaser type of person, where I'm like, oh, I want it, to be so pleasing. And now I don't really care about it being
Y-
pleasing.
Yeah, I think about so much of like even in high school when, because I grew up going to a church called Madison Square Church, and it was, you know more diverse than some of the other area churches, that have a lot of like in West Michigan, a lot of, white Dutch rooted churches.
Hmm.
um, they I would interact with all different kinds of people from the area, and then in high school it was kind of a mixture of like, I'm getting a lot of perspective from, a very small group. My graduating class is like 88 people. So I knew
Okay.
everybody in my high school class, and like was able to like see at least a little bit into everyone's life, and kind of, everyone um, had some interesting effect on me with that small of a class.
Hmm.
And at the same time I was, you know, kind of that like I'm not just going to church on Sundays anymore. I'm going on Wednesdays. I'm going to like the youth event on Friday. I'm doing worship band on Thursday. Like I was just like kind of face deep, and part of that was the Grand Rapids area churches have kind of it's like a collective, I guess, where it's the Grand Rapids Initiative for Leaders, and it's sort of like an extracurricular, um, the extracurricular thing that they emphasize, like teaching people about, there's the religious aspect because it involves a lot of churches, but then, you're learning like organizational skills, college prep, community engagement, activism, social justice. Like you're just learning a little bit about, things that impact the communities. And I just think about how like in all those circles, I was just running myself ragged trying to please every single, like, all right, I got to make sure like I study up on this thing and this for the school, and then, oh, my friends want to go do this, so I'll just stay out late. Like, okay, we'll just do that, even though tomorrow morning I got to get up and do this thing at the church. And it's like,
Right,
and
totally.
15 years of that. Well, not 15 years, like 4 years of that, and then college people pleaser kicked in, and
Hmm.
then
Hmm.
post college was like, after this past year when I got let go from Founders, I was like, you know what? I'm just I'm done trying to please everybody with
Yes,
my time and energy. I need to
yes,
do my stuff.
yes, absolutely. And I feel like, well, then people even, then they respond more to that when they can feel that you're just kind of going where you need to go.
Yeah. And yeah, I don't know how like I've heard a little bit from Detroit friends on how the East Side's doing, but I don't really know. Like I've talked to I don't know, Sammy Blosser and Rufus Ferguson, some people I met at Western who kind of
Hmm.
live in that area now.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I don't really know like if Detroit's kind of like touch and go with some venues or things, or if there's I don't know more remote work happening in general. But
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all of the above. I really don't know I know I've seen friends posting from different venues that were just live streaming. Um, like the Blue Llama out of Ann Arbor, I know they were doing live streams. Cliff Bells, I think, was doing live streams. But then I also think there was a period where like there was limited capacity, but then that went away. And so now I'm not really sure where we're at exactly.
yeah, I feel you on the like not really knowing like because I recently just got this kind of touch and go kind of residency at the listening room in Grand Rapids,
Yeah.
and it's it's a weird classification of like it's dinner music, but it's also like we're kind of advertising it as a show, but it's not a show because the listening room isn't operating as a venue. It's operating as an extension of the dining space for the restaurant right below it.
Oh, okay.
So it's like
Yeah.
this weird like it's a show, but it's not a show. But you need to make reservations, but there's no tickets. It's just
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I saw some snippets that you posted on Instagram from that stream, the listing. Is it like kind of a weekly setup?
yeah, it's gonna be at least this month. It's you know, like tomorrow and Saturday, I'm doing a trio with Madison George and John Muir Cotton,
Oh, nice.
and we're you know like doing that, and then the next week I'm bringing in a different trio, and then Madison and John will probably come back the following week. I'm trying to alternate, you know,
Hmm.
like people can come see this trio these 2 days, and then switch it up if they want.
Yeah, that's cool.
But yeah, it's like I wouldn't have expected that, 2 months ago. It all kind of came together literally the week of Valentine's Day, and then like I was asked to play some solo piano. I'm like, okay, like this is probably a one-off thing. But after that weekend, they were like, oh, we could do this on the regular, like just have
Mhm.
you know socially distanced 25% capacity tables
Yeah, right,
and
right.
just figure it out from there.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much figure it out from there is like where we're at.
Yeah, and you well, and like I listened to your record this week that you just put out.
Oh yeah,
Was
nice.
it
Qwinn, yeah.
Qwinn?
Quinn, yeah. Weird spelling.
Yeah, I liked a lot of um the kind of storytelling aspect of it.
Mm.
Just a collage of like it's not just like, oh, it's a collection of bebop tunes, or like, oh, it's my modern jazz record, and it's stuff I wrote in like a week and then shedded for a month and then recorded or something.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
It feels like a little bits and pieces of like your background, your family, your what you like to listen to, how you write, how you perform. Um, yeah, what was
Yeah.
the? I mean, I know you mentioned a little bit on the Bandcamp page that it started with like one song and kind of branched out from there.
Yeah, it kind of came from a cassette tape that I found of my grandpa playing and singing guitar, just like a home recording. Um, and it was really cool. Loved the timbre of his voice and the guitar. And then there was like one tune that was called Family Reunion on it, and like it was amidst COVID, so it felt very like apropos the lyrics being, come to the family reunion, it might be like the last time we meet. This very like sad, somber song. It's
Yeah,
like
wow.
it's like kind of dark, but I feel like because they're from the mountains, I feel like those songs are really dark. They go, into like some kind of like deep receded place. And so that tune just like resonated with me. And so that was kind of the start of it. I was like, oh, I want to sample this. And then I kind of like reharmonized the chords because it was a very simple, like 3 chord um, melody. So then I reharmonized it and played it along with him. But then I warped kind of, his recording with different reverbs and things to kind of match like this kind of haunting vibe of it.
Yeah.
And that was kind of like the mix of then I did some like improvisation on that, and then it kind of like was like, oh, this is like I felt a collage of like stream of consciousness stuff coming out. And so I was like, well, let's explore this now that I have, all this time at home.
Yeah. Why not? Let's just
Yeah,
make
yeah.
an album.
Let's just make an album. And I think because my writing style is, I don't know, it's like a piece together type of thing. A lot of times, like I don't have the singer songwriter where it's like you come up with the lyrics and then the I don't know, it's just like it's kind of like, oh, bits and pieces of like a poem or of like just like a quote that would like come into my head, or and then from there I'd kind of just create the sonicscape around it. Or yeah, it's so when I described it as a stream of consciousness, like journal entry type of thing, that felt the most accurate because it is like a merging of different styles too. So it's an interesting experience.
Yeah, it felt like, you weren't just treated to like one type of expression, which
Mhm.
I'm always a fan of like, you know, you get kind of a spectrum of like artistry rather than just some like, you know, explicitly like, oh, it's the love EP. Like, okay,
Yeah.
that's fine.
Right, right.
I might pick out a single from that, but like, I don't know, like too much of a one note thing, at least for me, feels like, like, hey, why, like, because even with something as like, commercially sounding as like, oh, it's the love album, like
Mhm.
that, you could take that into, dark places or
Yeah,
super happy
totally.
places or
Yeah.
confused, or, there's just like, there's so many emotions that can go with a topic that, I don't know, sometimes I don't want to say it's like sometimes it feels like a cop out if you're only doing one thing, but artists have, they can
Wow.
do whatever they want with it. So,
Yeah, totally. And it's yeah, I mean, even it was hard for me to kind of grasp, I think a lot of times as artists we're kind of told, especially if we're trying to like self-promote and like get people to listen to our music, like we have this like, oh, like where does this fit in the spectrum? Who's listening to it? And it feels a little limiting sometimes for me. So when I was creating this, I really wanted to be intentional about like the limitless potential and the limitless kind of ways in which humans move that
mhm.
aren't that's like that's like a spectrum of like options. It's not,
Yeah.
it's not so, we're actually I was reading a James Baldwin book, and he quotes how we've created these categories to help control and define like our world, but paradoxically they've just kind of caused a lot of chaos and confusion. And it's they don't really help. I mean, because I think categories help, but in essence, as humans, we're not in categories.
Yeah. It's like, I think of, um, in the political landscape, how much, there's so much division in sides and stuff, and it's been growing since like the the late 70s, early 80s type of rhetoric and stuff. But you know, I remember having a couple different conversations with people, and kind of both ended up being in the category of like, yeah, people just people assume, or they have an aspirational hope towards like, oh, this good thing I see in someone, that's the thing. And then
Hmm.
they do, it's like Joe Biden, he's gonna do it, we're gonna do it, and then like he bombs Syria within the first month of him being
Yeah,
in. And I'm
yeah,
like, yeah, that's, it's a dude who seems like he's from Andy Griffith, but he also has a very different approach to foreign policy than you.
yeah,
And like,
yeah.
yeah, just the weird. There, someone shared a clip of this televangelist who was kind of, he was saying like, there's no more oppressed person on the planet than the black man, and like we need to have reparations for, black citizens all over the world because the world has done the black man wrong. And then it's like, yeah, but 4 months ago you were saying the election was a fraud. Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's everyone's got a spectrum of like,
Everyone's got a spectrum, and that brings up I've been contemplating a lot on like human contradictions, and I'm actually working on a film piece with a friend that kind of like delves into our contradictions as humans, and like how we say, how what we say, how we move, um what we aspire to,
yep,
but just we have a lot of contradictions, even with the best intentions, and part of that, and like part of the album too, was kind of like looking at those in yourself, and kind of reconciling, you know and understanding, what contradictions you hold, and maybe where the roots of them come from. I think a lot about um, colonization and capitalism and things like that, and how they influence the way where we're at, like where I'm at geographically, like why am I even here geographically?
right,
Um, what has pushed and pulled me to be here? Um, and so and I think those are things that really can kind of spark self transformation, and things that where you can stand and be like, I have contradictions. I know they're here, 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 but I'm working on this, and then and kind of you can like move on from there.
yeah, and being able to see like how, even if you, years down the road, you're still in the city, you're still in your hometown, maybe you've done some traveling, or you've bounced around to like, oh, maybe I'll try living here, over there, like, what things draw you to a place, and how how do the people around you and your environment, and these things that might not be as directly influencing as you might perceive, just kind of, normally going, and like, oh, I'm driving around the city just going to pick up groceries, but then you kind of think about like, oh, why do I like this area? Like, what do I find pleasant
Hmm.
about the people, or
Hmm.
what's inspiring
Hmm.
me to like continue living here rather than
Hmm.
you know
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, and and in addition to that, the track on the album Redline um is about the policies, redlining policies that were put in place that moved people and shifted people, or that have real effects on how and where we live, that we
Yeah,
don't necessarily think about, but these are policies that are like have shaped, oppressive, kind of an oppressive system, but also move people in different ways. And yeah, so just like kind of pulling back the veil a little bit of
yeah,
of different things, and kind of exploring that in like a musical way. um yeah, has helped me.
yeah. Well, and I kind of gathered that like as soon as that track hit, I was like, oh, yeah, it's like talking about like, is this about like redlining? And I look and it was like, I think that wasn't it called Red, the track, or
Yeah, it's red, and then there's like the line that's but I don't know if it comes up on all, because I have I've used weird characters and like a lot of
Oh,
my track names. I don't know if it came up as just like that line that's on the keyboard. Um,
yeah. I might have, and I kind of just glanced at it too, of like, oh, I just saw red, but
yeah,
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 that,
which red is fine too.
yeah, this, yeah, at least the message came across, and um, I think more people are starting to, you know, realize a lot of what they had been taught at a younger age was sort of just this like, you know, oh, you can only cover so much in the curriculum year, or like, oh, we're just gonna kind of gloss over these big chunks of history that are, very complex. Um,
Yeah,
and
or
they're
telling
starting to
it to
see
you
like,
from
wait a
a
minute, that happened.
European lens. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's so true with music school too. Like, the studying of like, oh, these are the physical things, these are the physical scores we can look at. So we're going to
Hmm.
start with, European church music, and then we're going to
Hmm.
see how written music was developed and evolved and printed, and then, we get to Baroque, and then like that's
Yep.
it. Like there wasn't anything after, like there's just the development of European classical.
Yeah, right. And then maybe at the end they'll be like, "Oh, this stems from classical Europe and romantic," and it's like this is like they feel. Well, I don't want to generalize, but a
Yeah.
lot of times it comes from, like that's the primary root of, you know, modern music or something. So,
Yeah, and so many, I think of like the at least what I think is the right way, or not right way, but like thinking of the term cultural tourism, where you're kind of just like dipping in and
mm.
taking a little, like, oh, I like that symbol, and then you just kind of put it wherever, and you have no idea what it means.
Yeah, right.
Like I feel like sometimes people do that, like there is an intention sometimes, and then there's, unintentionally, like they're kind of getting their feet wet learning about another culture, and they want to
Hmm.
incorporate that into their vocabulary, but they don't do the due diligence, or they don't, you know I don't know. I feel like I have to involve someone who's a little bit knowledgeable about a thing if I'm
Hmm.
going to try and like explore a culture I have no, heritage in or relation to.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's a that's a good point. I think well, and I feel like though these things are like thousands of years old. Like I think a lot of times we just think so in the immediate moment. It's like no, it's okay. Like these stories and these like teachings will come to you if and when you're ready, and then you have to like, give it time, you know, to um to learn it the proper way if that's how it comes to you or just spending time, just
Yeah, and it's well, and it, I also think of like that whole thing of the only way you're gonna get better is if you try and do something. And
hmm
for some people, making uh, I don't know, they dip into an African culture, and they try this kind of vibe from an African thing, and it's a little disjointed, or there's not really a connection. It's just kind of
hmm
like, you know,
yeah, and people can feel that too, just yeah, when there's like
yeah,
a disconnect.
yeah. It's like it's not as bad as this, but I think of the Lonely Island skit from SNL with Ross Trent.
which
Where
which skit is it?
it's like it's I think it's on YouTube. They basically, like, Andy Samberg is Trent, and Trent's like, he he's making a song about how he like read a book on, Rastafarianism, and started
Oh,
smoking weed,
okay.
and now he's like it's me, Ja Ross Trent. Like, and it's a whole song.
Just from
Yeah, it's like from a
from
weekend of
from a weekend of reading.
Yeah, and like he's like foregoing his like Christian religion and like he has long dreads and
Yeah, right.
and then like one of the best parts of the video is he's like nearing the end of the song and you can tell he's like yeah I got it, I'm totally like I get it, the Rastafarianism, and then he walks by like actual Rastafarians and he's like yeah we get like doesn't, it's like yeah that's totally like if you know you're not being authentic or true to it if you like can't
Yeah,
feel comfortable around the people.
for sure. Yeah,
Like Tom Hanks's son does that too. Like he's got a very like Jamaican affect to his like speaking patterns, and I'm like, where did you? Is this just because you're bored and you're a celebrity's kid and you need to stand out or something?
interesting. It's like a whole market or like a branding decision or something.
Yeah, it's like it's it's so weird because like it's like how Tom Hanks you know him and you're like where did his son like it's like I don't know, it's like when like in a movie the joke of like the white kid listening to hip hop and then suddenly he's like thinks he's street or black.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You're like no no Cooper, you're just a
Just a white kid from the suburbs.
it's okay like
It's okay.
live
Right.
that truth, don't try and be
Right. That's like it's okay. Like there are things like you can't like you won't be able to do in life and that's okay. Like but there are things that you can and it's like find those. Like find what you do, you know? And
yeah.
that's so cool like to do that. I mean, yeah, I think I think just understanding that there may be some not limitations, but there's just some things that won't be your thing, and that's okay. That's
Yeah.
healthy.
And well, and that's kind of where I've, this past year reflecting on like my education and, what I've been focusing on, what things, have helped through this past year, what things were like realizing it was just like carrying a lot of, bad habits and stressors from 6 years of school. Like
Yes.
yeah, it's like what what are the things what are the spaces I want to be in? What are the things I want to do? Because I'm not, I don't know. Like I get the jazz labeling because I obviously went to Western for jazz,
Hmm.
like for my master's, and then I've played in jazz groups, and I kind of take a little bit of that language when I go into
Oh yeah, for sure.
other projects.
I've been listening, which I want to talk to you about some
Yeah.
things.
Yes. And well, and all through it was funny how many people were like, like pick the thing you're good at, like, pick that one thing, but then at the same time they're like, oh, you're just gonna be a performer, like
Right.
graduate.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want from me? Like,
Right.
do you want me to do everything or do you want me to do nothing? And then are you gonna help me do the other stuff then?
Right. Yeah. Well, there's like those two school. Well, I mean, there's more schools of thought, but I feel like when I was grappling with like, there's like the school of thought that's like, okay, like you master that one thing, like you just master it. That's like your life's mission is like to get that mastery.
Get it?
But just get it. Just put in those hours, and hopefully in your lifetime you'll get there. Maybe.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's like I feel like there's another school of thought. It's like you can still have that level of excellence, but be in other things that you're interested in or that inspire you and that do that make you want to create and things like that. And I grapple with that still sometimes. I'm like, should I just be shedding all day?
Every single well, and
Every
that was such a phenomenon of like this last year, especially like I just didn't like my only practice is if I have to learn a specific tune for a thing, or if I have to, you know, if I am getting ready for a recording session that there is some prep for, or like, you know, if I'm preparing, it's just like if I have a specific preparation goal,
Mm-hmm.
um, and you know, there's that part of me that knows there's going to be a time where I return to the regular disciplined, like the journey of practice, rather than
Mm-hmm.
like having, you know, that school mindset of like, well, I'm practicing to get ready for my jury, or I'm practicing for this guy's recital, or
Right. Yeah.
and because yeah, even it, you know, it's I graduated in 2018 from Western, so it's really only been like 3 years, and I've really only sat down and reflected on it this past
Mm.
year.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, that's real. That's real though. 'Well, I was taking classes because I went back and I was taking classes at Wayne until last winter. And then I decided I was done with school in the proper sense. And I still like take lessons with um, my mentor, piano, professor, theory, advisor. But I feel like that's all I need to kind of keep me on track because I can do the rest and kind of, pick the path of where I want to go versus, where in the classroom they kind of tell you where you're going to go, whether you like it or not. Like, this is where you're going to go. So it was only like this past year, yeah, since kind of like the shutdowns that I've also had the time to just kind of reflect and be like, I can let some things go. I can let some things go. And I don't know if you felt like this in school, but um, it is like collective and collaborative, but I still feel like there's like that competition, like, like who's the best, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and even like, because as you know, as friendly as a lot of the studios were, there was just that stress of like, you know, you want to look good in front of the professors,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
you want to look good in front of your peers, regardless, even if they are, you know, someone's gonna be like, man, that was killing, you killed it, man, and you're like, do you mean that, or like,
Yeah. Right. Are you like, saying things behind my back?
yeah, it's like I'm just trying. Is that? Well, and
Right.
then I had the you know, interesting, um the first year at Western, I got to see Justin Schultz, that pianist. He was in my studio,
Oh wow.
and I got to see him at like, you know, like 11 years old. Like he had transcribed like the Clifford Brown Joy Spring solo, but then he had slowed it down and put it all in shearing voicings. And I'm just
That's
like,
great for your ego.
yeah, I'm like, cool. I stumbled my way through this Herbie one, and haven't done a lot of transcribing before, but I guess you've been doing it since you could walk. So
Right. Oh my God. Yeah. That's that's crazy.
yeah, and it's interesting seeing his I wish I knew what his day to day was like, because so much of, you know, how he's presented is just like, you know, like I had no idea he played guitar until when I was at NAM last year. I saw him playing, you know, at the Dexabel keyboard booth, because I think they endorse him.
Hmm.
He was playing with his, you know, family trio, and then
Hmm.
I was like, oh yeah, Justin's here. Like of course it's the first person. I was like with Matt Ryan,
Hmm.
and we walked into the showroom. It's like, there's Justin, like just killing it with his family. Um, and then I like went on his Instagram just to like, I was like, oh, okay, I'll follow him, because I hadn't. Well,
Hmm.
I think I might have already been following him, but either way, I looked, you know, during that weekend, and the first time I found out he had played guitar was him posting a video of being endorsed by D'Angelico. And I was
Oh,
like,
great.
it's like, that's a way to announce. And he's like, you know, George Benson technique, and just fast and smooth, and
Just makes you sick.
yeah. And I had some insight into the world of endorsements in general with companies like to endorse, a bedroom musician that has, a couple 100,000 people following them because it's less wear and tear on instruments. It's less, replacement
Mm.
costs. It's less upkeep. It's just the same amount of eyeballs that they would get, or probably even more,
Oh yeah.
um, than like just strictly touring. So
Right. Strategery. Yeah.
yeah, so it's like, that's how, like these random. I think like another company, Abasi Guitars, Tosin Abasi from Animals as Leaders has a guitar
Mm.
line that's awesome, and he's he endorsed a bunch of people you'd see out in the wild, like Justice West and Isaiah Sharkey, and
Mm. Yeah.
but then he endorsed these very niche, like mainly existing on Instagram and doing like session work remotely type of people, like Steven Taranto, who if he were to do like if he were to just step out a little bit into the the guitar world of like, because so much of that electric guitar world is shredding, like his technique and his ideas are like some of the cleanest execution of an instrument ever, and he's just some dude in his bedroom.
Yeah.
Like what?
It's totally crazy. I know. I'll just be like scrolling on Instagram or something, or or whatever, and some killing people will come up, and not a lot of followers, not a lot of views, but like they're killing it. I'm like, it's just, and then a cat video has like 5 million views, so it's just, it's you just gotta keep doing, your thing.
Yeah,
Try to be, the best that you can, and and that's, at the end of the day, I feel like that's, for me, I've come to grips like that has to be enough for me, and
right.
pretty much it is. Still working on it.
Yeah, and I see some friends that have they've really stepped up their careers in the last 2 years. Even I think of like the two that immediately come to mind for me are my sax player friend Caleb Elzinga and trumpet player Evan Taylor. I don't know if you've met him.
Mm-mm, haven't met him.
He's worked with a couple Detroit, like he was in Ludington last because he's originally from Ludington. He was visiting last summer, and we did a track with just in his making like a beat vibe track, and
Hmm.
we hit up Brandon Rose and Sasha Kashberko, and they threw some stuff on that. And that was the first time of me hearing those two names, because I feel like I never hear about Detroit
Hmm.
unless I
Yeah.
seek it out in Grand Rapids. And um but Caleb and Evan both kind of different trajectories, but they grew their social media, what types of content they were putting out, what things they like to do. And then Caleb is now joining Joe Hertler and the Rainbow Seekers to do some be on tour and probably record with them in the future.
Nice.
And Evan has like he's got an endorsement from a Victory Instruments and living in Miami now, and I think
Oh,
he's gigging
nice.
in, he's doing like the the traveling gigging musician
Hmm.
where he's like, oh, I'm on a plane to go to Colombia to do this
Yeah.
thing with this band or something.
Yeah. Totally.
But it's interesting to
That's
see,
awesome.
like, when you have people that are closer to, because I was gigging with both of them with Benjamin James for like 3 years, until early 2018 maybe, I think
Hmm.
was, or maybe late 2017. Um, so it's interesting to see like people being able to use social media to elevate their range of possibilities in their career can
Mm.
do,
Yeah.
rather than you know just having it be an archive of like, I did a thing, and then it's like, cool, all right, next. Like, that's, I feel like how so many audience people are They see something
Totally.
and they're like, "That's cool. All right, what's the next thing?"
Yeah, already. It's totally true. I have not cracked the social media game. Um, and I don't know how much time I want to dedicate to cracking it, but I
Yeah.
think that's definitely cool. I like to hear the stories of those that, yeah, have made it work for them. So that's inspirational because I feel like so down sometimes. I'm like, it's just capitalism, you know?
Yeah, it's just that Facebook blocks access to your posts until you pay them. Like, that's
Right.
true. And like that's what's so funny about like, the Social Dilemma came out last year and everyone
Right.
kind of had this very, like, whoa, I didn't realize how much, machines and like these systems were kind of boxing us all in and keeping us separated from like things we want to actually interact with. And
Yeah.
then I tried to, do something as simple as like, hey, follow me on Facebook if you want to see my weekly streams. And, I get like, I think I got 4 likes in the last 3 months. And I've been
Right.
streaming every Sunday and like posting regularly there and like different types of content. I'm now doing I'm trying it. I've done some promotion boosts in the past, but I've never looked at the analytics. But there is a way to just kind of see the two things I want to try or that I'm trying with these promotions are like
Hmm.
which hashtags make sense and
Hmm.
then which there's a way to see when your audience is online essentially so you can time your posts a little better because
Oh,
I'm
okay.
I'm I'm used to scheduling as much as I am organic posting and there's arguments against and for both which make it confusing.
Yeah,
So
right.
there's like I'm at the bar where like I'll just try things and I'm already, you know, the odds are not in my favor. Every now and again there's something cool like Pete Rock shared something I did and Daru Jones and Marcus Machado and all these folks I like listening to shared it and that was like, oh cool, you went
Did
on
that help?
it it was funny because it got like, close to 5,000 views on Pete's page and I maybe saw maybe I don't even want to say 100. It might have only been like, maybe 50 in terms of like people that followed me over there from that post. So conversion rates are stupid because it's like
Yes, right.
unless you're like I don't know. I feel like the broadest, I see some of the broadest content out there that's like, like reaction stuff where it's just
Yeah, right.
you being like, that's weird. Whoa, I didn't know that would happen. What? It's like you're just vocalizing what people are already thinking.
Yeah, I know.
Like,
I know.
what am I supposed to do? Like, I don't want to react to, and
Right.
like, and some people have argued in the music, they're like, oh, I like music reaction things because it gets me, I follow this guy and I find out about new artists through him and it's cool. But I just kind of see it as like, I don't know, it's weird. It's not profitable either because like with Universal Media or Universal Music Group, whatever
Yeah,
the
right.
big
Yeah.
conglomerate.
Yeah, the
Like
licensing.
I've had videos that'll use like a snippet of audio being referenced in a stream that's unlisted and just I had literally just hit the like, oh, okay, done with the stream end and then I look and there's already a copyright claim and I'm like, how I
Like
literally just
upon
did it.
the
Like how?
That's crazy.
Like
Oh
no one
my.
can see it and no
Right.
one should know it exists yet and yet it's already claimed.
These these are things, yes, that I'm like, I need to know more about because how does that work?
Yeah, it's so like I've seen how people do certain tricks where like they and this is where kind of the Patreon can help too. If I do use something or reference something that's copywritten, I can edit it out of you know the video and audio and put in like hey, I don't want this to be demonetized, so if you want to see what we were watching or looking at, head over to Patreon and become a patron.
Oh, okay.
So there's that way to
There's that way.
circumvent the
Okay. Yeah.
copyright, but
Yeah, right.
it's so much work.
It's a, it's a lot of work. We're just like, we want to create.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and you mentioned you were saying you wanted to chat about stuff that I was up to or
Yeah, well, I've been kind of like doing a deep dive of all Dutcher things. No,
jumping into so third grade.
yeah, right. So when you were in sixth grade, tell me about it. Yeah. No, have you watched the Hot Ones? Have you seen? Do you watch the
Yeah,
Hot?
that's in my, I've seen a bunch of them, and I need to just do another marathon of like
He's just a
watching.
great researcher in like all the guests that he has on. So it's not that level of research, but I just wanted to listen to some more of your music and see the videos that were out there. And so I started with Blushing Monk because I was like, oh, Monk, I love Monk. But I was wondering, is Blushing Monk, is it from the founders beer? Like, what is the inspiration behind the name?
So it's one of those things that like in terms of chicken and egg, the bass player at the time in the group was Joe Vasquez, if you've ever met him.
Yeah, yeah.
And he I think we were trying to think of a project name because the band originally came together as a response to what's his name, Steve Hilger. He was booking the talent or part of the talent for the Grand Jazz Fest, and they always have like a student slot. And he hit me up, was like, hey, do you have a group? Do you want to perform? And I'm like, I'll perform. And in my head, I'm like, I don't really have a group though.
Yeah, that's great. But you take that opportunity.
Yeah, so I
just figure it out later.
Yeah, I was like, okay, yeah, I can get a group together and recorded and rehearsed by August. That's fine.
Yeah, sure, I'll do it.
And so I did some recordings of music at, I just used Western Michigan's the university studio, Western I think it's Western Sound Studios, and that was like, it was me, Brad Fritcher, who was in, kind of my first, like, we'll call it professional, like past high school,
Okay.
Gigging jazz group, and Caleb Elzinga, who I met through that kind of initial project. We used to have years ago, a weekly slot at the Speakeasy Lounge where we would get together and play tunes, invite people up to improvise. It was a very like a fun, creative vibe. And I met Caleb through that, and then Olin Clark, Jordan Otto, and Joe Vasquez. Jordan I had met through Western, and then I think Olin I might have met through, I want to say it was either through mutual MSU friends or gigging with Brad Fritcher at some point. And then, Joe Vasquez I met through mutual MSU friends and then also playing in Benjamin James's band. And that whole album was like mostly it was all, I think the first EP was like my tunes and Olin's tunes. And then this album that came out was the EP remastered with 3 new songs that I wrote. And so we put that band together. And Blushing Monk, the name was, Joe was drinking that beer at the time.
Okay.
And then I kind of thought about it as, like partly being like, how do I make this sound like artsy and conceptual? And I thought about the name as like, it speaks a little bit to my personality of like, shying away from the knowledge and the wisdom that I was, getting access to, because there were those times like in the scene where like it doesn't help to know everything. It just, being someone you could drink a beer with is like most of the Michigan scene's like collaboration.
Yeah, totally.
It's just like understanding that a person to person, and it's not like coming in there being like, well, you could superimpose this key borrowed from the relative minor, and you're like, I don't care, what is
Totally.
it? Just,
You could add these facets on top of here. Yeah.
I'm gonna quote this song as a reference to the vibe of this album from the '60s, '68, when everything came to a head. It's like people are already bored. You're like, okay, fine, I'll just put it in the liner notes you won't read then. It's like, what do you want from me?
That's yeah. I've met some of those. I've met some people like that. That's funny.
Yeah.
I'm just like, my head, I can't.
And it's like, now I see the commodifying of like simple, quick tangent, I guess. Commodifying of like simple, like on Instagram, you have, I always make fun of pickup jazz because they've kind of built this organization around, young 20-somethings in pastel hoodies playing 251s on D'Angelico guitars next to plants. And that's like their whole...
Yeah.
Most of it's just like, it's a vibe. You want to know this vibe? It's a 251 in E flat, but I'll sell it to you if you...
Yeah.
Like, why are that's why I loved Glasper made that post where he was like, stop asking me for charts. Like, you can't be lazy and get good at something. Like, do the work. Stop asking me for charts.
That's great. Who posted that?
Glasper, Robert Glasper.
Oh, Robert Glasper. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
And like the actor Anthony Anderson, he made a post in response to that, and he's like, "Hey man, I know you're not going to give out those charts to those people who are asking you, but I don't know if it's 1/4, 2/4, 4/4, whatever 4. I don't know. Just give me the chart. Give it to me. I don't know what to do with it."
That's great. I just started following, I can't remember who I just started following, but guitar player who makes these funny musician videos, and one of them was like this whole thing where the guitar player it was like this kind of like 90s work setting, and they're like, Jim, you printed this off, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I won't do it on. They're like, it's not that you printed it off, it's that it's the chord charts, and you've been learning how to play guitar for 5 years. It's like, when are you going to not need the charts? After 5 years. It was just like this whole, they make really, really funny videos about that. Just, it's like total musician nerd humor like that. Right. Like you've been learning for 5 years. When are you gonna not when are you gonna not need the chart?
But yeah, I guess, so Blushing Monk kind of, it was born out of a, necessity to have a group for a festival, but then it kind of turned into, the name kind of relates to how sometimes I feel as like an academic trying to work in like, and not even see, it's weird because I'm not like an academic, like I'm teaching at a school or I'm still in music academia, but like having that experience and knowledge that's like very, it's so different from like how an average person would approach to like learning and playing and operating in music. There's just different experiences, and usually a lot more hours spent working, obsessing, doubting, like loving it, hating it.
Yep.
Just like every day is just like, that's the thing. And so it extended to, the name kind of extended to, because the lineup kind of fluctuates, but it's all people that have gone through those similar experiences and want also to have a group to showcase their original music as well. So it's kind of like a meeting of all these Michigan jazz folks that also, play in other scenes, and might not even be in Michigan for that much longer.
Right. I saw in the most
um,
recent release that was kind of part of the process was people moving out of state.
yeah.
And yeah.
And it's like and that's the thing too of like I feel it was also kind of noticing where this group kind of sits. Like we still get, I've only submitted to a handful of stations, and like Blue Lake Public Radio has been good about playing us, and I hear us on WICE sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, but like, there's this weird. It's a weird thing of like, oh, you're the young up and comer, you're in high school, you're playing, you could form a decent phrase and play out with some of the teachers, and like you don't fall all the way on your face, and people
Yeah.
support that, and they're like, you could do it, you go. And then you get to
Yeah.
college and it's like, all right, you're in the college, like, all right, you're not the young, like, oh, okay, it makes sense a little bit more because you're studying it, and like, okay, this is cool, and you're learning stuff, and then you get out and it's kind of like you're just thrown into the like, who cares? You're just like me trying to get gigs.
The world
Uh,
pool of, yeah.
yeah, that weird like it's like, wait a minute, where was all that enthusiasm that support the young generation? And it's like, you want us to only play cocktail gigs with like the
Right.
standards that you've all been playing for the last 20 years? Like, no.
Yeah, yeah, right. It's so true. Well, to that point, just bouncing off that, I feel like there's a lot of like coming to grips with like age type of things, like the young and it's like the younger you are, just like the more magical everything is. But
Yep.
um I feel like I was watching that like Netflix docuseries with Fran Lebowitz, and she just said something funny. She's like, "Yeah, I find age incredibly boring," and I'm like, "Actually, it's true. It doesn't matter, age in essence is kind of an arbitrary, you know, kind of marker of just, I guess experience, but that doesn't mean you are any less magical.
Yeah.
Just, at whatever age you're doing whatever you're doing. If you're doing it and it's, resonating and you're doing it with, passion and excellence, it's like it's good. Like just do it.
Yeah, and I had heard from that same like Instagram stream I listened to last night. Um, they were just dropping these and just being funny about it. Like they dropped these like little nuggets of wisdom on what they were talking about, and Kev on stage being a comedian, he would, just like he would hear some profound statement, just like throw off his headphones and be like, "I'm trying to tell these people." And one of them was like, he had heard a quote that's like, people give up on their dreams when they're 25 and then they live till they're 75.
Yeah, right.
Where you had all this time.
Facts. Yeah.
Like
That
what?
is so true.
Yeah, it's like, why do you think it has to all come true in your 20s? Like it
I know.
usually doesn't. Like most of these people, there's a lot of examples of people like having to kind of like fall on their face, and then they get their careers together in their 30s, and even then it might not be till their 40s or
30s, I know. I mean, example is Thelonious Monk. I've read like 3 of his biographies, and I just find he's like an incredible inspiration because, of the way he thinks about and, creates music, and then, him not getting really any notable attention until, as late 30s, early 40s, I think.
yeah.
Um,
I like that fact of, like Monk, he didn't write a ton of songs, compared to someone like a Duke Ellington, but
mhm.
he's still in like the top 5 most programmed composers for jazz. Um,
Yeah,
like, I don't know if that was a radio statistic or if it was just a general like between performing
I believe it.
and just the industry, I guess. But it was still like, it's like, yeah, there's a lot of Monk tunes that that have kind of his stamp on it that are hard to like, other people might have sounded close but not quite exact
Yeah,
as what
for
he was
sure.
writing and doing.
What he was doing, how he was playing it. Yeah. Every time I listen to him, I'm like blown away again. I'm like, yes. You hear something new. Just like
Yeah,
way ahead of his time. Well, back to Blushing Monk,
sure.
because I want to the title track Blushing Monk. You wrote that? Did you wrote that tune?
That one was Olin. Olin wrote that song because he had brought um I think Voodoo. Yeah, Voodoo was one that he had performed in his like senior undergrad recital. He
Okay.
kind of rearranged it for the sextet, and then um Frankenstein was a tune he kind of whipped together looking at his one of his family's dogs because he's got one of those like small like Chihuahua mixed dogs that it and has like you know buggy eyes with different colored irises, and you're like this little
Okay,
Frankenstein dog.
yeah. That's cute.
Um, but he wrote Blushing Monk for the recording session for the project.
Oh, it's so
But
good. I love the bass riff um type of I love that. And I love the beginning of your solo too. It felt very like Ahmad Jamal-esque, the beginning of your solo on the 2017 recording.
yeah,
Um, I was like, oh my God. What were you when you were, improvising on that too specifically? Were you thinking of any inspirations or were you
yeah,
studying anything at the time that was kind of like coming out?
it's and I always tell people this. I feel like I'm a bad jazz student in that way where I've I have some transcribing and some studying under my belt, but a lot of how I play is just from like kind of I could probably reference a recording or like hear something and be like, oh yeah, I was listening to that at that time, or I was because
Hmm.
a lot of that song in particular, I just like the attitude and the rhythmic interplay of
Hmm.
it,
Hmm.
and that's kind of what you know I wanted to do a solo that in the moment felt a lot of as much as I try to figure out like okay what are my what things do I want to showcase based on the harmonies or the vibe of the tune or like what's a goal for trying to be expressive.
Hmm.
um, that was very much unplanned. uh, very like just kind of reacting to the the attitude of the tune and
Hmm.
trying to ride like that confidence of like or maybe it was anxiety trying to be confident like trying to whatever energy it was like being like all right I'm in it, just do it, like just go, just keep
But
playing. Do something.
it worked
Cool.
for me.
Yeah, and I was actually listening to that album the other day because I've been you know s- starting to brainstorm for like what the group could do next now that more people are like I didn't really do anything with the group last year because the guitarist I've been using, he just had a baby, and the um the drummer has an autoimmune disease, so I was like making sure he dealt with how that
Yeah,
affects him with COVID.
for sure.
Um, because I guess it's not that he's more vulnerable; it's the opposite, that his
Hmm.
immune system is over aggressive.
Mm.
um, and then, uh, yeah, but just I try to think of like the people I'm going to have on a session and how I want to feature them and write write with them in mind in a way, but also I don't know. I bounce around so much from like oh I want to make like a Tigran or a Cameron Graves like really aggressive crazy
Oh, yeah.
record, or like oh that I'd love to make like a a beautiful like textural kind of record, or oh I want to make a it's like
Yeah.
you know
Yep.
all over the place.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. Um yeah, I'm trying to think of you know I've I've saved some recordings of like, voice memos or videos, and they're all kind of in a folder. And I think that might be my, I have those. And then the other two ideas I've had, that might be easier in terms of like having a framework that I can just make a song around.
Hmm.
Working with, Mark Lavengood and being in that kind of Americana songwriter Michigan scene a little bit in the past couple years. Um, I've met like, May Erlewine and Seth Bernard and all these people who are kind of they tell the stories of all these different experiences they've had and people they've worked with.
Yeah.
Um, so I've thought about making an album arranging like Michigan songwriters in that vein.
Hmm.
Just picking songs that are fun to play around. And the other one that might be a little trickier now because I realized I deleted a bunch of old messages to make space on my phone.
Hmm.
Um, but my dad, you know, always supportive, sends me songs that are like, oh, you should try this with Blushing Monk. And it's like, like uh, some like dude from like, it's always from like the 50s that I'm like, I've never heard of this person, but I know he's related to like, the crooner culture. Like
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, oh, it's this dude who like, he's Puerto Rico's Frank Sinatra. And you're like, who? And it's so I wanted to make like take six of the songs he sent me and just make an EP called Songs from My Father, and just arrange all those tunes and put it on Bandcamp or something.
That's great. I support that.
Yeah, anything, especially with
My
the
father.
doing all trying to focus on more of what I want to do is like that's partly why I have this office here
Mhm.
at Third Coast is because I have access to two different studios I could record with,
Yeah, that's nice.
and that will kind of help realize some of the things where it's like at least right now I never have enough money, but I have a lot of time, so
Yeah.
that's all I can really do.
Yep. I understand that.
Yeah. So you've been have you just been working in other jobs, or have you kind of stuck with the music thing and wrote out unemployment, or like how's
It
just
was
everything?
yeah, just all of the above. Yeah, I've just been pretty much riding it out. Fortunately, I have like the my rent is pretty low, so I could afford to not do too much. And like with expenses being down, with just kind of staying put.
Yeah.
I've been able to manage, just creating my own music, but it's the limit. I have a limited setup at my house, so it's just me and some synths, a Nord, and a mic, and that's pretty much how a lot of the album was created. And so just kind of digging into like the sound engineering component of recording and mixing, and um, so that's actually what I spent a lot of last year kind of digging into. It was a learning curve, many frustrated days and nights trying to figure out, what's how to EQ my piano. I feel like EQing piano was um to get it just how I wanted it. It was like more of a challenge than I thought. I don't know about for you. How do you how do you feel about mixing piano?
Yeah, it's always like, especially from like different keyboard sounds that I, like with Earth Radio, certain things like that are my go-tos, and then like having them in a recording setting versus live is always tricky.
Hmm.
And doing these like solo keyboard streams on Sundays, uh, like last week I did it in Studio A here, and they have a baby grand and some mics, and I listened back and I'm like, okay, you can hear it, but it's kind of, you know, it feels too one note, like too compressed.
Yeah, there's
There's
not
not
like the
enough of the
depth.
full sound being.
Yeah, right. To get that full
It,
range of frequency. You know?
yeah, I'm gonna like I'm just gonna kind of you know because the interface I use, I have an XR18 out here,
Okay.
so I can just I could conceivably do like, oh, I'm gonna do a stereo overhead pair, and then I'm gonna do a couple different room mic options. I'm gonna do maybe another, like, I'm just gonna blend a lot of mic signals together and see what happens.
So that's for next time you're gonna try out some new
Yeah, I
mics and
well,
things. Or did you do that for the last one? And
the last one I did last week, I just did the stereo pair, and
okay.
you got it to a point where like, okay, I feel like I can hear everything, but
Hmm.
yeah, it still needs more tweaking. But
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, because I'm planning on I'm planning on doing that, and then I have this. I've always had this like hobbyist, engagement with like video games and trading cards and just all that nostalgic stuff from being a kid.
Hmm.
That I'm like, okay, I still have a little bit of a foot in that, and
Yeah.
I'm gonna do a stream just sorting through all these old Pokemon cards because that's apparently exploded in the last 6 months. Just people have been like people have just been
Really?
buying card boxes for like of the original sets of Pokemon cards for like
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Are you kidding me? Oh my
I,
gosh,
I,
you see my brother still has his. Like,
yeah,
you
it's
know what?
so, and just kind of even just learning a little bit about it, it's like, you know, there's so many factors, I guess, why the original set became, like nostalgia, not a lot of prints. It wasn't a high value item at the time, so the cards that are in like pristine condition are even
Hmm.
more rare because most times, like I remember opening up Pokemon cards like I think it was my parents or my grandma. They like we were playing outside and they handed us some booster packs and we just ripped them open and we're like cards and just left them on the driveway or like
Yeah, right.
we're like
You're like,
that could
oh,
be
if
that
you
could
had
be
the, all right,
great.
that could be, the next album, funding for the next album.
Yeah, I could pay for a new car. Like no.
You're right.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'd have anything that valuable, but it would be interesting to see, like what's
Yeah.
there and
Yeah, that'd be fun. I
just
feel
yeah.
like, yeah, I just remember the holographic ones. When my brother would get the pack, I'm like, did you get a holographic? I was like,
Did you get?
did you get one? It
Well,
was
now
like
it's
the
like
best.
it's almost like they know the company knows like like they want the shiny thing, so they have
Too
like
many of them.
yeah, it's like
Yeah.
4 or 5 different holographic qualifiers. Like, oh,
Yeah.
it's the card except the background is shiny, and then oh, it's shiny but with like this like pastel paint look, and then oh, it's shiny but it
It's too
yeah.
much. When you have just like the holographic and then like just the everyone else is the regular card, you know, it's a little bit more special when you open the pack.
Yeah, and I guess there's like Japan put out um I'm sure like there's an American version, but they put out a pack that was like, oh, it's just full of shiny cards. Just
Yeah.
a pack of like
Just-
super shiny.
yeah. That's it seemed like yeah, that makes sense for that would come out. I feel like it's just like a matter of time. Like
Yeah, it's
that you
like the
get like
greatest hits or something.
yeah, the great right, exactly. The great yeah. It's like why don't you just cut to the chase? Get
Yeah,
get the greatest hits. You don't have to go through all these other packs.
yeah, and well, and I'm not gonna like. There's always that argument of like, don't make everything into content, like, because you want to keep some stuff like just chill. And I want to make it into content, but it's gonna be much more relaxed than trying to do the music stuff that's like a weekly, daily,
Hmm.
um, and the content would really just kind of be like, oh, look at this thing, look at that thing, wow, remember this game?
Right. Because I'm like, when you said that, I'm like, where's the line of what is content and what is not?
it's so like, and if last year taught anybody anything, is like there's a lot of people who can make money doing literally anything. It's like
Hmm.
you could make a career, like, I don't know, if you're a QAnon congresswoman, you could, that's your career. You did it. You believe in a conspiracy and you got to a government office like that. You could do that, or you could just review shoes and you're 12. Like
Right.
one of the richest YouTubers is Ryan's Toys, and he's like it's really his parents curating this content, but it's this kid who plays with toys, and he's like 9, and he's worth like $6 million or something.
I have not heard of that. That is so
So
crazy. I have
weird.
to look it up now. It is so bizarre.
Yeah,
Like we are in such an interesting time. Like it's cool and it's weird.
yeah, or like, Charlie D'Amelio, like the most followed TikToker, like she just dances in her mansion. That's like mainly what she does. And people are like, I like dancing, not realizing like I look at that, I'm like, how'd she get that house?
Right. Yeah. You're
Dancing.
like dismantling everything around it.
Yeah, and it's like, okay, well, and then it's that weird thing too, where she's like 17, so
Mhm.
it's like she's doing that, and you're like, all right, how many, who are the creeps that follow her? Who are
Right. Yeah.
so
You
many
know,
layers of like the viewership more than, you know, like
totally.
I don't know, wealthy people trying to be authentic is always funny. Like, it's just my house. We all have houses. It's like your bathroom is bigger than half my house.
Right. But we're relatable.
Yeah. We
Like,
all have we all have rooms dedicated to, a very specific thing.
right? I don't. It's like the human psychology, though. It's very interesting. Well, because I was just like I was on YouTube, and like the suggested one was like a a woman playing like a Chopin prelude, the Chopin prelude in E minor, like, but the clip was like she's in like full lingerie, and it's like, and it had like 1 million views, and I was like, hey, why did this come up? I mean, I guess piano. So, but then it was just like tripping me out. I was like, and like I didn't watch it, but I was like, I wonder if she actually plays like the prelude, like in a in
Yeah.
a sophisticated way, or not sophisticated, but just like in a way where she's like learned it, because the way she was sitting on the bench, it did not look like she was ready to play like a piece of music in any like serious context. But
Yeah, and especially like thinking, I see those types of things, and it's like people could do whatever they want, but I
yeah.
also think of there was such a weird culture in like the early 20th century of like, like the piano is the least sexual instrument, and you should teach your daughters to play piano so they can sit up all prim and proper and entertain
Right,
babies.
to be the perfect Renaissance woman. Teach
Yeah.
her French, teach her how to play the piano or harp. It's
There's always like some old dude just wrote a book like the statistically these women should play piano because it's
docile. It's
yeah,
a right.
it's so subdued
So,
and
right? That's a whole thing.
like, wait, what? Like, oh, hold on. Or and
Right, I refuse.
yeah, and then they say like, I think the one of the books that we referenced in the piano lit class was like, this guy made that argument and then said like, the cello is the one you don't want your daughters playing because they have to spread their legs.
Oh, heaven
It's like,
forbid.
yeah, I'm like, oh no, like, what will they do except, I don't know, play the instrument? Like,
Right, they'll be a dope ass musician. Like I don't know. Like there's so many things like that. Like, well, especially like feminine and masculine, and like what even is that?
right.
I was reading I can't even remember the book. I think it was like like the history of pop music or something. Kind of like lining, like mostly the history of pop music in America and kind of the roots of where it stemmed from, and it had some okay things, it had some things that were not applicable. But one was like, oh, in it was something to the effect where it's like it was a more sensitive music. It was more feminine, and that was more attractive or something. You know, just like all of these like sensitive, emotional. Well, it was like it was feminine. It was, you know, and I'm just like, come on.
Uh, yeah, and
What does
then
that mean? I'm
yeah,
like,
it's so like, and there's there's still those elements today of like I think of when like was it was it Phoebe Bridgers who like smashed a guitar on stage recently? It was
oh, oh,
some
and
random.
wait, and SNL was it or
Yeah,
did okay?
I think
Did
so.
you see it? I
No,
actually watched it, and it was a little. Well, did you read articles about it?
I all I saw was like some of the dude bro because I had followed some of these like metal music publications when I first discovered
Hmm.
the genre in like late middle school, early high school, and some of occasionally I'll see an article that pops up, and one of them was like one of them was just talking about that incident, and all the comments were just like how dare she smash that priceless guitar, like da, da, like and it's like that's the whole rock and roll culture that men have done.
Totally. Like, hold on, I'm gonna look
I
it up
just
because I'm like, is this what I'm thinking? If it was on SNL, I actually watched that SNL episode, and I was like, man, I wish she would have went harder, like smashing that.
oh, so it was
Like, I
like a
think, yeah,
polite
yeah, yeah, it was her.
thing.
Um, yeah, it was almost like it took her a little too long to get it smashed. Like, it was just like it was like just a tad bit too long. And I was like, I had no problem with her smashing the guitar. I was
Right.
like, I just wish she would have went in a little bit more. Yeah, like just break it.
Just yeah, you're gonna break it. Just break it.
Just break it. Yeah, just like use, whatever. But that's funny that those articles. I didn't see any like articles of the follow-up, but I remember watching it and being like, that's cool, but I wish you would have went just like a little bit wilder.
Yeah, go a little. Just lean into it a little.
Yeah, Leah is like it was just a little too like almost felt a little held back. Or and I was wondering if it was her idea or somebody else's idea. It was like just smash it. And so there's always,
Yeah,
when you're on like a bigger platform like that, you always wonder if it's like, is that the artist or is it somebody like around the artist,
like management or
Yeah, right. Being like this is
we want to continue this rock and roll image we're crafting for you. So.
right. Well, that's funny. That's cool. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay. Another question. I don't. Did you have something?
No, I'm fine answering a question.
Okay. I just wanted to know, are you using a Moog Sub Fatty? Is that the synth that you've been using in like Earth Radio type things, or
Yeah, it's actually right over here, right back
is
there.
it? Yes. Okay. I was
Uh,
watching the NPR Tiny Desk submission,
oh yeah.
and I loved it on that track. It sounded so good. I was like, oh, I just got a Moog grandmother, and then I was
Oh
like,
nice.
man, maybe I need to get a sub Fatty, but I'll explore my grandmother for a little bit before
Yeah, I
I.
feel like all Moogs kind of have like the mix of like the presets kind of have a character to them, and then you can kind of craft them all to sound similar.
Yeah, yeah, it's true.
But yeah, well, it's funny because like I use, I want to start using it more for like its intended purpose of being a bass instrument, and
Hmm.
and um, I like using it as a lead instrument too,
Yeah,
especially if I can like.
I love the lead tone you got out of it. It sounded great.
Well, yeah, that was also funny. I look back on that video and I'm like, it's like this is what we did with 3 hours. Like, what could we do with more time?
Did you write the tune in 3 hours?
We had been playing a lot of those songs that ended up on Mother's Breath. You know, since the fall. Not all of them had been written by
Hmm.
then, but some of them had started to take shape, and that was kind of when, fall of 2018 was when Madison George joined the band, and we kind of had a shift in like how we were writing and performing together. And that video was made during the launch of our Kickstarter. And it was it was like a week out from the deadline, and that's the deadline for the Tiny Desk submission.
Yeah.
And we had, like I had asked Hugo Claudin, who has he lives in the heritage, or not heritage, the Heartside community in downtown Grand Rapids, and he's had a loft there. He's a percussionist, visual artist who does a lot of stuff with photography and painting, and it's around luchador theme stuff. And he also uses his space, depending on what types of neighbors are living next to him for shows. And so I had asked him hey, can we use your spot to shoot this video? And he's like, yeah, cool. You got about 3 hours on that day.
Okay.
So it was 3 hours. I had hit up my friend Sarah Ford, and she brought a couple extra people to help assist with filming. And then this sound engineer, Austin Kane, I brought all the equipment, and I just told him hey, can you help just make sure it's tracked and maybe do a mix?
Yeah. And did he end up mixing it, or did you end up mixing it?
He ended up mixing it.
Okay.
And great. Sarah and the team edited the video, and I'm surprised with that quick of a turnaround that there wasn't more mistakes. The only two that I caught were some weird, I don't know, it was just weird visual glitches. One that's more noticeable is during my solo section, there's a part where it cuts to Hannah, and she's playing the accompaniment, and it looks like when you're in a video editor and you're watching something in real time, and then it kind of lags for a second and catches up. She's kind of playing, and then all of a sudden it was just
yeah.
But
that was a good
yeah.
Because I almost for a second thought my video was lagging, so that was good.
Yeah, and yeah, so that one came together. To get that tone was something that I had picked a preset, but I had from just playing it live, I knew how to tweak a couple knobs to open it up a little bit more, and yeah, and trying to do it with not a ton of keys too. That was a fun
right. Yeah, I thought about that too when you were soloing, and I was yeah, I'm doing good, getting a lot of solid lines, and it doesn't feel like you're lacking, so
yeah, I've always I always admire those I don't know, in terms of phrasing, the people who can kind of there is the mechanical aspect of oh, these are certain things that the human voice can't replicate. But then the people who try to speak in a very human way with their phrasing, it gets closer to those singer phrases that you're oh, it's just it's smooth and connected, and and I think that's at least partly what I was trying to go for, something tuneful and
yeah.
I don't know, that song it was written by our bass player, and it kind of builds to that solo section.
Yeah.
For all the messaging and stuff. So
yeah. I definitely think it worked for that style of song, and yeah, I loved it when I heard the tone. I was yes, the synth tone is on point.
Awesome. Yeah. I think too with what was my thought? Something about in thinking of the human or
Mm-hmm.
human singing, I guess.
Yeah.
A singer I followed in the last, well, actually two, I guess that. I mean, there's so many, but
Mm-hmm.
the two, okay, three that the third one just came to mind from the last year. Yeba, she
Mm-hmm.
like just so effortlessly could just like foo, like to go as high as possible and do these runs super low and
Mm-hmm.
phrasing. Ashley J, she is like so skilled at singing and off the top and like in a way that she's superimposing changes with how she's phrasing. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, she understands how to like hear an arrangement in her head and sing to it rather than just like,
Mm.
have to like take what you already know and readjust it to a form. Like she's
Yeah.
building compositions
Uh,
with how she's, there's videos of like Kayvon Carter. I don't know if you know him.
mm-mm.
He's a great person to follow.
Yeah, I'm like writing these down.
He, Kayvon Carter's like he's goofy, but he's a gospel artist with a great ear and he's a great arranger. So he'll take the first video I saw of him was like somebody's mom at like a high school basketball game singing the national anthem in like seven different keys. And he's just like taking all the notes and making it, like acting like he's the accompanist, like, okay, show your range. Come on. But with like
Oh.
Ashley J, he's just like he's playing along to she did like a Christmas medley a couple years ago and she hit all these different songs with different transitions and the way she's phrasing them and how Kayvon's kind of playing them, it's like, whoa, she's like really like
Mm.
she didn't just like hit a chord and like, oh, I'm gonna hold the five and improvise around the five. It's like, oh, she just modulated keys in a
Wow.
really cool way, like stepwise and like,
Yeah, yeah, that's cool.
um and then someone I started following last it might have been last summer. I found out about him through Erica Badu. Duran Bernard.
Mm.
He's a he's um he's like he's such a personality, like also kind of goofy, has a gospel background. Um he's like this gay black man who kind of glides around in like high fashion but also on roller skates. So he's just got this like he's got videos of him just like vibing to a tune on roller skates, but
Sounds great.
his range is just like he's got that gospel power behind his voice, and then
Mhm.
he's because he doesn't take himself seriously, he does you know, these runs or these ideas that are just like, it fits a character and it sounds really cool and it stands out among other singers trying to emulate other people and
Mhm. Right, right.
but
That's so do you take inspiration from these singers when you're kind of doing like single line improvisation or
yeah, it's definitely a mix of like what I hear people doing on my instrument and then trying to, if I had more of control over my vocal singing, like how would I express a phrase that, you know, usually it helps with me trying to break out of a piano shape,
Mhm.
um, and like, you know, really take care in how I'm like hitting a certain note or
Mhm.
in a phrase or just trying to like not doing the singing while playing along thing necessarily, but um, yeah,
Mhm.
trying to hear that
Mhm.
that version of a singer that I wish I was, and then put it in my right hand or something.
Yeah, that's great. Well, speaking of singing, well, I've been doing kind of like an interesting study of Keith Jarrett, um, but not not his singing along,
Yeah.
but the way in which he moves his body when he performs. So I've been doing kind of like a visual transcription of when he plays, like transcribing the notes but then looking at how and where he like moves his body when he's playing, and
Oh,
it has given me like a whole different kind of connection to the transcription, because I'm like trying to embody, because it's like a whole body experience when you talk about like your voice and the body, and everything is connected when you're, you know, playing or when you're, you know, soloing. And so that kind of has like helped me pass a little bit of a barrier in like in terms of my feel and how I'm connecting with like the instrument. Because sometimes I feel like piano is a little less personal than like a horn or a
hmm.
voice, obviously. But it doesn't have to be. I feel like it, you know, it can be expressive too, but there is like, you know, it's, you just have to work with, you know, the way in which you play it in a percussive way where, you know, the note decays as soon as you strike it, you know, that type of thing. But
Yeah.
mhm,
Yeah, and also the differences too. I part of why, you know, part of my work I do here, I guess, is being able to kind of jump on different keyboard instruments for a client.
mhm,
To, you know, I'm not the most versed at organ, but I can do something with it. And
mhm,
I'm not the
mhm.
most, you know, I didn't grow up learning how to play on a Wurlitzer, but I can, you know, take those things that we develop as pianists naturally of like you might go do a gig at a function, and they're like, oh yeah, we got a keyboard or we got a piano, and you're like, a little beat up, but
Right.
well, I guess we'll make it
Well, it's
work. Or
not great. Yeah.
so like taking that and being able to like, you know, the touch that comes with playing an organ versus playing a
Hmm.
Wurlitzer, a Rhodes, a acoustic piano, an upright piano, like just
Yeah.
the way that the sound hits a little differently. Um, you know, it's not. I don't know if it's like for horn players, like maybe like different mouthpieces. I guess
Hmm.
like just thinking of like it's not changing too much about the instrument other than the touch and like what happens when you strike the same looking key just on a different
Hmm. Hmm.
equipment.
Do you ever feel like, because sometimes I feel like when you like meet a new keyboard, you have to kind of like meet the key, like you have to meet and be like, hi, this is me. Like, who are you? And then like you have to have like this. Whereas like I get envious of like string players or like guitarists who could just bring their instrument. I'm like, you already know like your instrument so well. Like you don't have to have like that awkward meeting at the beginning. You know, it's like, are we gonna hit it off? We don't know.
Yeah, it's like, are you gonna work with me or against me?
Right, like where are we, you know, where are we at? Sometimes you know, you add a keyboard or a piano and it's like, oh, like you know each other. But then sometimes it's like, oh, you got some quirks. I have to let's, you know, let's meet where we meet. And it's like yeah, it's like a process like you said with just like, I don't know. I feel envious sometimes of those who can carry around their instrument. Do you ever get envious?
Yeah, I definitely I think back to Jerry's too, where like, you know, you spend all semester practicing on like, you know, you find the two or three practice rooms you can rotate that
Yeah.
have like decent pianos, and then you get to the Jerry, and it's like a much nicer piano, but like a very different experience.
Totally. Usually it's like the bass is so much more present, I feel like, and then accommodating, you know, my touch to versus, you know, practicing on an upright or something.
Yeah, just like I remember at Grand Valley that, you know, they have a Steinway in the smaller recital hall where most of the juries are done,
Hmm.
and that was always like it felt like the touch was a little bit lighter, and it was really easy to get loud, and it was
Hmm.
really difficult to like, you know, like you could play soft, but it's like you're playing on these very like almost like pillowy keys, and you just like you can't like press too hard or too soft, and
You're right.
And I was always like, why can't you just like come hear me play in the thing I've been playing on for months?
Right? Why can't we just do that? I
And
feel like, yeah.
yeah, and well, I had a professor even just be like, well, that as a pianist, you got to be able to play on any piano. I'm like, but then
But,
why do people
right.
run like why do people have backlines then? Expected to play on.
Right? Or you get to like Ahmad Jamal's level and just like bring around your Steinway Grand like to all your gigs.
Ah, such a that's a whole other like I can't imagine having that kind of resource at my fingertips. Like,
Right, it's a whole nother level. Yeah, just well, do you bring your roads around? I've noticed. Do you?
oh, I bring I guess some of it's here, like the Moog, and then
Uh-huh.
this Yamaha CP33 I've had since I was in like ninth grade.
Nice.
I I know I want to upgrade to a Nord, but it right now it kind of serves the purpose of also being a table. 'Cause I can have like these
All
pedals
your
that are all
pedals.
over. I can put the micro Korg. I could have it sitting on top of the Yamaha to the right, and then
Yeah.
I usually like I did play them separate, and now I've just been kind of MIDI chaining them because I have one of those like radial key Largo keyboard mixer
Oh, okay.
DI things, and
Oh, nice.
yeah, and I've dipped into using Keyscape. I have yet to try and use Omnisphere to its full potential. That's going to take me like 10 years.
Right, the universe is open.
Yeah, it's like you could plug in what is it like 30 different synths or something that you can like hardware wise. Like I could plug the Subfatty into Omnisphere and use all the knobs to control the shaping of the tones and
Oh my.
just
Yeah,
like
okay. Yeah.
thousands of presets. And
That's like a whole thing. Yeah.
yeah, a whole it's like it's useful for like having all those sounds available, but it's also
Hmm.
like until I have my favorites that I save. I think every time I've tried to use Omnisphere on a session, I end up finding something just ready to go on hardware way faster because there's so
Yeah.
many like you know oh, it's a clone of 5 different Moogs when I could just use a Moog that I have.
Yeah. Just it's well, I feel like with that, I feel like I would get decision fatigue pretty quick unless I like, worked with it enough where I knew kind of like, oh, I hear this sound and let me, just go to it. Like
Right.
because I feel like I'm always like, oh, that sounds cool, and then like I'll do something and be like, but this too.
But let's try that
But
one.
let's try right.
And like the people like Anomaly who can like I watched his setup video that reverb.com hosted on YouTube.
Hmm.
Um and his band is like his band is every member has tracks and like an Ableton session that has a blend of automation for like the shaping of certain sounds, the like just automated patch changes that fit in the scheme of a song.
Okay, jeez.
And so he could just keep playing an arrangement and then you know like it'll change to like, oh yeah, I need that one sound for this like and like
Yeah,
change
yeah,
back to the chords
and
immediately.
yeah, they have it automated, so they're just playing straight through.
Yeah, but it's like semi-automated. So like some of the
Okay.
patch changes are automated where he doesn't have a free hand, and then others of them aren't. So
Oh, okay. So
it's
then
like
he,
he's memorized like, all right, I could just keep playing, and
yeah, that's
then
cool.
oh, I got to change. Boop, and then like,
Yeah, yeah, that's cool. Do you think is that in a live setting? That's a recording setting, or is that in like a live setting that he?
this was a live setting. This was with his touring band,
Oh, okay.
so they
Yeah,
all
that's cool.
had like because I guess there's a way to link Ableton sessions, so they were all linked to Anomaly's like master setting.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, that's goals. Let me write that
So, yeah, that's if I could get to a point where I have, I'm starting to craft these instrumental tunes that involve all these different sounds, to have as many of them
down.
replicated live would be cool.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's interesting. Because I was thinking about, how will I make some of the tunes on my latest album? Like, how would I perform them live? And that was kind of a question that kept creeping up. Was like, you know, without using a loop pedal, how
Yeah.
can I, craft some of these multi-layered synth parts in real time live? So without like doing like a backing track or something like that. But
Yeah, and I've done the hardware kind of version of it, where with the Key Largo I'm able to run three stereo inputs from hardware, and then USB as well for software, and then there is MIDI, like the 9-pin or how many pin MIDI ports on the side of the unit that can convert the signal to the computer. So I can I can use my my Yamaha and have it MIDI chained to the microKORG, so I get all those sounds but with the bigger keys, and then I can have it chained into my keyscape, so I can mix in and out like oh, I like this Rhodes sound, or I like this clav, or
yeah,
whatever. I can just change it and then like mix it in, and
that's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot more control than just like hoping something works, but it's still like
Right.
a lot of like setup and like, okay, I got to make sure this is plugged in right, and this
Right.
I'm more used to it now.
Yeah. And you feel like the workflow live is pretty seamless, now that you've kind of worked with it.
Yeah, it's more seamless, and it's because I don't have the computer horsepower to go fully software yet, to try a show like that. I could do a simple one like, oh, I'm just gonna run Keyscape and a controller, and I could do a show with that. But I like the mixed setup, because then it's like, oh, if my computer explodes for whatever reason,
Yeah,
I
right.
still have hardware.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I fear that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned the microKORG on the bigger keys, because the keys are so tiny on the microKORG that it's like disorienting. Like after you get done playing, going to the big keys, they seem like so massive. Like,
Well,
what?
it's like, do you know um, glasses at all? Glasses.
Mm-mm.
I think that's
No.
how you say it. Actually, one thing I keep forgetting I can do, and this could be, one of those things. It's like, if you're a patron,
Right.
you'll get to see this experience.
You're
But
gonna get slapped with the copyright.
yeah, because as soon as I like look at something that's not mine, it's like, hey, what are you
What are you
doing?
doing?
Yeah, hold on. But Glasses is like, he's got like really cool controllers, and he's got a cool approach to like gear and sound creating. Let me see zoom window, and then I can do this and share it. So this is his profile, and his current project is he's creating, in the spirit. I think it's like direct covers, and in the spirit of certain games, he's doing, like creating synth sounds from scratch, and like trying to produce some kind of track in the style of a thing,
Okay.
in like an hour, like just as
Okay.
a thing. But
That's
he,
cool.
he'll post these things like this. I don't know if you can hear this.
Yeah.
But look how tiny those keys are.
Those are so tiny.
He's just like, just gliding over them with his long fingers.
Right.
It's just like a chiptune Chopin prelude.
Yeah, it is. It's great.
But then like also like in the other corner showing how he's like having to change the octave.
Right.
And I'm like, even that is like, what?
That is really crazy. That's wow.
But I love like this controller was custom built. It's got these buttons that he can map sounds to.
Okay.
So his left hand is like bass and drums. And he's just like doing these quick little like like
that's
this guy
great.
just it's like crazy.
Oh my god.
Yeah, he's been one of my favorites to follow the last couple years. Bill Wirtz is another dude that he's a whole other rabbit hole. Like yeah, Bill Wirtz is like if you
he's a rabbit hole.
Yeah, I don't know if you've seen any of his stuff.
I don't think so. I may have.
He's one of those like he's somehow borrowing all these different, pop elements that aren't just like, current pop. It's more akin to like I don't know, like I want to say 80s, but it's not even like it doesn't have that flair or those sounds with it. It's like he's crafted this style of like writing and like the lyrics, at first pass they kind of seem like nonsense, and then you kind of listen again and again, and you're like, oh, they're kind of these weird ways of interpreting certain subject matter that are kind of goofy. And then he animates in like like until recently he just got into 3D. A lot of the stuff he was doing was like two-dimensional, very rudimentary, like stick figure drawings, color palette changes, but everything was like aesthetically and precisely like timed with things in the arrangements.
Interesting.
So you have like this experience of like
it's like satisfying.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this is cool. I like how everything flows and and like actually I know one video real quick.
Okay.
Just one.
Just one.
Yeah, because then otherwise it's like another hour's gone by. Like,
right.
Hi, how's it going? Dutcher Snedeker here. I know you're pretty far into this episode already, but I had to cut the part where I'm showing AliceSun, all the Bill Wirtz videos. But if you're a patron, you can see it in the stream archive, and I'm going to try and clip it out into a separate video because when I uploaded it to YouTube, of course, the copyright claim engine kicked in and it won't let me monetize it. And while I'm not making a lot of money off of YouTube yet, or any money at all, I just want to set the standard so that I can have more things monetizable as soon as I, figure out what that even looks like. So if you want to see that stuff, go check it on patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker. Yeah, it's fun. I always like seeing people's reactions when they're first learning about Bill Wirtz because he's such a unique entity as an artist. All right, back to the interview.
That's great.
Yeah.
Like you've given me so many things.
Yeah. I mean, if that's I feel like part of being self-employed is just like carving out that time of like
right.
being engaged with something that is like, whoa.
Right.
That's different.
It's like part of the workday, really.
Yeah, because I've always heard that argument of like, oh, it must be hard. Like, you're a musician, it must be hard to like go to any concert and not like analyze it. And it's like, well, I think it gives me a little bit more of an advantage, or not an advantage. Like, I'm a better audience member than you. But like being able to like go into a space and understand more of what's going on on a, have that ability to hear certain things at a deeper level and enjoy, especially like I feel like I enjoy something way more if having those tools in my head to like, it's like satisfying me as a person, but also as, a music nerd, always trying to take a little tidbit of something and
and then and let it inspire you. Yeah, I think for me, it like that has just happened like in the last year of just like enjoying, like so many people are doing so many like beautiful things. I think before, like especially when I was in school, and there was more of like this like you gotta get, you gotta be the best, you gotta get your music out there, and I would like, feel my ego being like, oh, like I suck, and like listening to other people's like beautiful music would make me sad, which is like so dumb. And just like in the last year, I'm like, yeah, it's really, there are so many people doing really, really cool things and to just like open your ears and enjoy it is, it's part of the process. It's part of the work,
Definitely. Well, yeah, it's been like 2 hours.
I know. I was like, I don't know how long this is supposed to last. Well, you can edit this down. Nobody's gonna watch 2 hours.
No, that's the funny thing, though. The world is somehow at a place where, a 15-second reel is about as much as you can get out of some people, and then a 3.5-hour Joe Rogan on DMT podcast.
Right, yeah. Yeah. I listen. Yep.
So I just kind of let it fall where it falls. But I know we'll probably have more conversations this year and
yeah, hopefully
and back on the podcast and
yeah, thanks for reaching out. I'm excited. Now, your listening room, is it only on Facebook that you're streaming it, or?
Yeah, I'm gonna try, because I just got Yellow Duck to work for Instagram.
Okay.
So I might try multi-stream, or I might do like multiple devices and like figure out how to route different outputs to different pieces of audio, but I have to play around with it a little bit, because I do have the possibility of like routing audio to an interface for my computer and using a phone as a camera and taking a board feed, running it to my iRig stream interface thing and plugging it directly into a phone.
Okay.
So I want to, whatever version, I want to try and, I don't know, I want to get to the point where there's like the auto switching multicam,
right,
instrument type thing.
Yeah, that would be cool. Yeah, well, I look forward to, hearing more things from what you're doing.
Yes.
Enjoying all of it. It's been keeping me sane to hear you play. So yeah, thanks for inviting me to the podcast.
Yeah, this is great. Where can people find what you're up to? And you got the new album, you got an Instagram, probably.
Right. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's pretty much the main thing. Like, well, the album dropped on Bandcamp. I think it'll be on other streaming services in the next couple weeks. And then I have my Instagram, and maybe from our conversation, maybe I'll try to do some more things on it. I'm inspired. So I post things happening there. But yeah, those are the main two outlets right now. But hopefully more.
Awesome. Yeah, and for those who are either, I actually had confirmation someone was listening to an episode I did yesterday. For those of you who are listening on Patreon, or after the fact, you can support podcasts like these by going to patreon.com/Dutcher Snedeker and becoming a patron. That helps me out with the time I put into all of the work that goes into podcasting. But it also gives you early access to episodes, behind the scenes streams like this. I'm working on some more, behind the scenes-y type content that'll go on Patreon first. And you can also just share these things as they come out to the public. Follow me on socials, all the things. You've heard it. times. But go do it if you want to.
I just love it. If you want to.
I'm not going to force you. It helped me, and some of it's literally just clicking a button, but don't.
Yeah, but you don't have it, right. But it's just clicking a button.